Hello and welcome to a special Thursday edition of the Wisco Fanatics Show. We are joined by John from Lombardi Time Brews. We are live from Stadium View in Green Bay. If I look to my left, I can see Lambeau Field and the practice field from here. It was a short walk, really close to the Lambeau Field. Before we get started, I do want to give a big thank you to Stadium View. Their staff and Rhonda that I've been emailing with, she's super friendly, super willing to help us figure out how we're going to host and everything, as well as the staff being friendly when we got here. So I really want to thank Stadium View for hosting us today after Packers practice. And Jake, Don, we've been together for like 5 hours now since this morning. But yeah. So we're going to start with Packers and Patriots joint practice takeaways. So yesterday the Packers and Patriots practiced together. Today the Packers and Patriots practiced together. I saw Rob Mofsky tweeted out that just maybe 2 joint practices was one too many. So, Jake, John, I don't know who wants to go first and give some practice takeaways.
Your Honor.
Yeah, this was not exactly how practice went yesterday. So I was fortunate enough to attend both yesterday's practice and today. And my 2 main takeaways were, one, yesterday was a very successful practice for the Packers. I mean, they moved the ball well. Defensively, the pass rush smothered the Patriots. And then today was like the complete opposite. Today, Jordan Love and the Packers offense had great difficulty moving the ball. And in addition, their defense got pretty carved up even by Mac Jones. So certainly area of some improvement to learn from today. And then my second takeaway was yesterday was really civil. It was just nice. The teams were functioning together well. They didn't seem to have any issues of being chippy. And then today, that lasted all like 45 seconds before the scuffles broke out. And then there was even one stretch where it was the Packers offense versus the Patriots defense, and it was scuffle after scuffle after scuffle after scuffle, to the point where LaFleur and Belichick even came screaming in and reamed out a good amount of their
dropping F-bombs and everything.
Yeah, I mean, like this was
safe for work.
Totally different atmosphere, but another fun practice in the books for the Green Bay Packers.
So, to me, looking at it, and we heard this from Matt LaFleur yesterday, that the Packers were actually the ones that reached out to the Patriots about doing joint practices. And to me, based on Matt LaFleur's comments that he made and just knowing what we know about Bill Belichick and his history in the NFL, what he likes to do is he game plans to take away your best player. Mm-hmm. And with the Packers going into this unknown scenario, that Matt LaFleur would want it so that they can get as many different looks from a guy like Bill Belichick, who they know can scheme up different things. He's going to give you tons of different looks. But that seems something advantageous that the Packers are going to deal with going into a new season with a new quarterback. So, Jake, what's up to you from practice today?
Well, a lot of the same stuff that John was talking about, lots of fights. So I brought my son, who is a Patriots fan. So he was enjoying it, saying that we were beating the crap out of us, which I don't believe. I think they were being a little bush league, in my opinion. And I do agree that their defense was kind of taking it to us. As John pointed out, we whooped them up and down the field yesterday. So I personally felt like Belichick, maybe it was just the players, like John pointed out to me when we were watching practice, that they wanted to make a point of emphasis that, like, you're not just going to beat us up. I don't care if we're in Green Bay. I don't care if we're in, Arizona, New England. It doesn't matter where we play. You're not just going to treat us like that. So that was one of the few things that pointed out to me, and a lot of cool formations on offense, man. It's going to be an exciting year for Green Bay. Lots of speed, lots of options. I mean, we had Jaden Reed in the backfield at one point, and I was acting like a 10-year-old little girl, so it was very exciting to me. Splitting out the running backs, a lot of big tight end options. We could put them in the slot. So a lot of cool things on offense. And the defense, I'm not really worried about too much.
Yeah, and I mean, to your point, Jake, like with Belichick obviously firing up his troops before the second practice, like we were commentating at practice today, there's a right way to go about being fired up.
Yep.
And then there's just straight up a violent way.
Yep.
And it seemed as though the Patriots players chose the latter of the 2 options and just came in today with some reckless aggression.
Yeah.
I agree.
So watching play, this was before the team started doing their one-on-ones and 11-on-11 drills. What I was noticing from Jordan Love as they started doing their drills was that his deep ball accuracy needs some work, But his short and intermediate stuff, he was doing really well about hitting his wide receivers in stride and just being accurate. So I was good with that. As we were a little bit closer to the defensive side, I was trying to watch down at the other end. What I saw, Jordan Love's corner end zone accuracy was also very good. So I was actually encouraged by Jordan Love's his looking at like his mechanics and things like that as he's doing all of the drills and everything, which is, I know, something that people just say, well, he's supposed to do that, but it's still a matter of actually doing it. So I do think that you practice the way you play and you play the way you practice. So seeing him do those things in practice does give me encouragement that he's going to do them when he plays.
Yep.
My biggest thing potentially from the Packers offense, New England could not stop Aaron Jones.
No.
I don't think he had a single play that went for less than 7 yards, 8 yards, and he had multiple that would have been probably 20-plus yard gains. And I'm not saying that this is what caused it, but a lot of the chippiness that came from the Patriots practice came after Aaron Jones started carving up the Patriots on defense. And even Aaron Jones got into it with the Patriots defense a little bit. And if Aaron Jones is getting fired up, like there's something going on.
Right, and I saw Romeo Doubs kind of waving somebody off from New England. It's like he doesn't seem like that kind of guy to just be – he's not a talker, right? He's a I let my game do the talking kind of person. So when you see people like him, like you're saying, Jones and Doubs, getting into it with Patriots players, there's a lot of chippiness going on, and I wish I could have been in those conversations.
I mean, but that's it. Like, we expect that from Elton Jenkins, right? Especially like after last week. Like the O-lineman, we expect it, but – if quiet guys like Dobbs are having to wave it off, if Aaron Jones, like the consummate citizen, is getting involved in scuffles, like something's going on.
Yeah,
and that's exactly what it looked like today.
100%.
So just a couple more things. One on the offensive side, using misdirection and play action with Christian Watson and Romeo Doubs, and like Jake mentioned, by throwing in Jaden Reed potentially in the backfield, the offense is going to be so fun to watch. It's going to be so fun to watch. Just the ways that they're going to move things around and all the moving pieces that are going to be parts of this offense. It's really, really exciting, especially when you bring into a guy that we're going to talk about here in a second. One of Jake's guys is Luke Musgrave, who's going to present a lot of problems using him in different areas. That's going to be really exciting in addition to obviously all the talent that we have. It's just all young and unproven.
Mm-hmm.
And 2 years from now, when these guys all have tons of experience and they are potentially proven, that we'll have seen it coming back in 2023 when we were talking about it during training camp.
Yeah, I mean, I used Musgrave yesterday in an end around, which to use a tight end in an end around is just absurd. But yet he's got the athletic traits to pull it off. So why not add it to the playbook?
And then two things on the defense real quick before we get into the pipe trains. Colby Wooden doing a really good job of diagnosing play action and not falling for the fake. I noticed that on a couple plays. And then on more than a couple plays, I noticed Kingsley Enagbare in the Patriots backfield a lot today. Rashawn Gary's still not doing full team practicing. He's still off to the side, but he is in pads and a helmet. Mm-hmm. So I do think he's close. But Kingsley Enagbare getting a lot of reps in his absence, and he's doing a lot with them today. Yeah. All right. You guys ready to jump into flight trains?
Yeah, let's do it.
All right. So I kind of teased Jake's first type train a little bit, so I will let Jake go first. Jake, give us your first type train, the guy that I can already tease for you.
Yeah, I'm just really big on the Luke Musgrave. And if you watched our stat projections episode, you know that I was going crazy with targets and receptions and touchdowns. And I just think the ability to have him in line or split him out, in the slot or even outside the numbers is just unmatched on this team. Now you have a guy, Luke Musgrave, he's 6'6", 253, right? Then you throw a Christian Watson out there who's 6'5", and maybe one of the top 5 fastest players in this game today. I think there's an argument for it for sure. But you have those two things, and now today, like I can't get over it. You see Jaden Reed in the backfield, right? So now you have these two gigantic statues that can just run. And then you have a linebacker looking at Jaden Reed like, I have to cover that guy? He's running right past me. I don't care if it's an out route, a drag. I don't care what it is. Maybe they run him deep out of the backfield. What is a linebacker going to do with that? You already need safety help over the top of Watson. So I think that Luke Musgrave is going to get a ton of one-on-one matchups, and he's going to be able to use his frame. And it's just going to be a good connection with Jordan Love, who can throw balls up in the air and just let Musgrave go high point that thing.
Saw Christian Watson actually high point a couple
Yeah.
balls today from Jordan Love too.
Yeah.
And then another guy, a hype train that I'm riding, in addition to being the conductor of the Romeo Dobbs hype train, because I started that one last summer. I had the
You did.
graphics approved.
You did.
So in addition to conducting the Romeo Dobbs hype train, I am now on the Jaden Reed hype train.
Yeah.
From everything that we're seeing as far as anything depth chart related or just what we're seeing in practice so far is Jaden Reed and Samari Toure are being used in all of the exact same scenarios. So we're basically getting might be one of the most closely contested camp battles that we're seeing, but I do think Jaden Reed is going to win it based on just all he's done so far in camp is catch touchdowns, and I think he's got more tools than Samari Toure does. Like, we know that Samari Toure's got the speed. Jaden Reed is not a slow guy by any means. And Jaden Reed, in my opinion, his contested catch ability makes him just that much more valuable.
Yeah.
So I'm fully on the Jaden Reed hype train with him as the third wide receiver and also the number one punt returner. We saw the play that he threw, Sean Clifford threw Jaden Reed, kind of a high ball, and Jaden Reed went up and got it against the Bengals the other day.
Yeah.
What wasn't as widely publicized was the Packers running an outside run play and Jaden Reed setting the edge against an outside linebacker with a very, very nice block. If Jaden Reed is going to also be bringing better blocking to the table than Samari Toure is doing, Jaden Reed will easily, far and away, be the number 3 wide receiver on this team. All right, John, who's your first hype train that you're riding?
So my first hype train, actually, it's one of the tougher players to really assess when it comes to training camp, but I'm riding the Quay Walker train all year. Because, look, I mean, in training camp, it's difficult to assess an inside linebacker when there's not even tackling going on, right? Like, that's one of their main functions.
Right.
But what you can see is coverage ability, athletic traits. In the run game, in Quay's specific case, because his biggest struggle as a rookie, realistically, wasn't coverage, wasn't his athletic traits. It was diagnosing run plays. And from what I've seen in camp, more often, he's been in the correct run lane than not. And if he can add that element to his game, he can very quickly become an actually complete inside linebacker, as opposed to last year, where the promise was there, the athleticism was there, pretty much good enough tackling ability, but it was diagnosing running lanes. Now it looks like those pieces may be falling in place for him. And frankly, as we all know, if he can keep his temper in check, which according to the locker room, he is now doing meditation with Jair Alexander, which should make him just about the chillest human being in the world. So if he's able to accomplish it while putting together diagnosing and if his mentals are in the right place, like Marshawn Lynch would say, I think he can become a complete inside linebacker really quick.
All right, Jake, who's your next hype train?
That was a great choice, by the way, with Quay Walker. So people are going to freak out. I just want you to be patient with me. My next one is David Bakhtiari. And I know a lot of people are like, oh, he wants to leave and go to New York, or he doesn't play enough, and there's all this stuff, right? Well, the biggest storyline going into the season, whether we like it or not, is replacing Aaron Rodgers with Jordan Love. What is the one thing that every young quarterback needs? A good offensive line.
Especially left tackle.
Especially left tackle, because that's one of the most important positions in football, the blind side.
Yep.
When David Bakhtiari played last year, he was very good. He was all-pro quality. Yes, I believe he only played 11 games. But when he was on the field, he was all-pro for those 11 games.
Yep. You
give a young quarterback a left tackle with the rest of the good offensive line. Now, John's got some thoughts on the offensive line a little bit here. I'm just going to foreshadow, but I'm really looking forward to that. You give him a good offensive line, you give him a run game, and you give him a good scheme, and you're setting that guy up for success, which I believe when David Bakhtiari is healthy, Jordan Love has all those things. A good O-line, a good running game, one of the best running back tools in the NFL, and a good scheme with the pre-snap motion, as Tyler and I have been pointing out for ever now. Also, if you watch our show, you know that we are in love with play action. So you dominate the line of scrimmage with the running game. You get some play action. You give Jordan Love a couple extra seconds. We got speed. We're getting down the field. We're taking shots. I love everything about that. I'm just telling people right now, don't get off the David Bakhtiari train.
Go have to issue the David Bakhtiari apology form.
It's coming.
Did that too. My second one, I had this one written down before the Bengals game, and now it's just completely just rolling down the rails real quick. It's Harrington Valentine.
Yeah.
It's gaining a lot of steam to continue using training references, but a lot of the beat writers were asking Matt LaFleur if thinking about Harrington Valentine is going to give them the opportunity to potentially use Rasul Douglas at safety.
Yeah.
Now, to tease again, something we're going to talk about in a second, safety is something that's going to be a hot topic of conversation for the rest of the preseason. As far as Harrington Valentine is concerned, his play is going to have a lot of eyes on it in the next 2 preseason games as he continues developing through camp, which is something that Matt LaFleur said he's going to have to keep improving. And if his play continues to improve from where he's already at, they will, like Matt LaFleur said, have to find snaps for him.
Way to pick the easy one, Tyler.
I was on it early, at least.
He did tell me before the game. So I'll vouch for Tyler.
All right. I mean, my second one is, like the opposite way. Tyler picked one who's quickly ascending. I'm choosing one who's currently hurt. Bo Melton, currently out with a hamstring injury. But he and Malik Heath have been competing for wide receiver 6 all camp long. And at OTAs, all of the headlines are about Malik Heath, this UDFA from Ole Miss, who suddenly is producing like he always should have in college. Well, there, all along, has been Bo Melton, who has some college pedigree of his own. He's got 4.3 speed, but the biggest thing is in the earlier wave of training camp, before he hurt his hamstring, Bo Melton was always the guy with the later strings with the ball in his hands. Oh, I mean, it was notable. And in my own show, I was constantly pounding the table saying, Bo Melton should be in the lead. And then we got to the Cincinnati game, and Heath blocked a dude into oblivion, and Melton got hurt. But the truth is, Bo Melton has the skills for a scrappy, special team ace wide receiver that you'd be looking for. And I believe scrappy is actually the exact word that Matt LaFleur used when talking about Melton. So if Melton can get back, if he can get healthy, if he can produce the way that he was before this hamstring injury, we are going to be in for a very, very tight battle at wide receiver 6.
And we can throw Grant DuBose in that conversation as well, because I've heard nothing but good things about him too since he's been back from his injury.
Yep.
Before I get my last one and we move on, I'm going to answer Brett's question real quick, because he said, I'm looking forward to hearing your comments on special teams, if that's even done in joint practices. It is, and it had to be cut short because there kept being fights.
Yeah.
So, yes, there was special teams, but it was cut short after what seemed like 5 or 6 fights. It was probably more like 3 or 4, but there was at least 3 or 4 fights in the middle of the special teams portion.
Yeah, freaking they had to have Belichick go over there and talk to him. As said earlier, one of the helmets went flying.
Players got kicked out of practice for running up and blindsiding a guy while 2 guys were talking to each other.
Oh, there he is with the blindside.
Yeah, with the blindside hit, yep.
And Brett, just to add, I mean, all throughout training camp, they've been doing teams in each practice, but it is a lot of just walkthrough type stuff, jog through, making sure that guys are in the correct positions as opposed to actually blocking and hitting each other. So teams is worked on in every single practice. It's just not that intense when it's open to the public.
I'm going to wait. Don, I'm going to hold on to your question. I'm going to save that one for John because he's going to talk about the interior offensive line. So I'm going to save that one. We will come back to it.
It's got multiple
He
questions.
said Tucker Kraft was his draft crush. So
I'm here for it.
that's a potential hype train to hop on too. Right now, he is kind of being a little overshadowed by, as far as tight end play is concerned, by Luke Musgrave, because there's so much to love about Musgrave that Kraft is kind of being overlooked. And what I've said when it comes to Musgrave and Kraft is it reminds me of last season when we had Dobbs and Watson, where Watson was the shiny toy, and it's like, oh my gosh, look at all the things that he can do. And then it's like, yeah, but we also have Romeo Dobbs, who is just kind of all around solid with some upside. And that's how I feel about Musgrave and Kraft so far this training camp. And then we'll see how they continue to go and how they're actually used once we get to the regular season. So one last hype train that I want to throw out there before we move on to some concerns is Tariq Carpenter. He's another guy who's been hurt, so he hasn't had a ton of camp reps yet. But seeing what Joe Barry has done with like a quote unquote, it's a star player, not like an all-star player, but like a star hybrid type linebacker safety. The guy that was when he was in LA was Josh Johnson. So having the Packers have a guy that they can use in that type of situation. Another guy that I would say is in that same like category of player at times is Micah Hyde. So if you upset about Micah Hyde leaving, maybe a guy like Tariq Carpenter, and I'm not saying that Tariq Carpenter is going to be the next Micah Hyde or anything like that. Like I know that Tariq Carpenter is a Pro Bowl level of talent, but I'm saying his build and his play style could be something like how Micah Hyde was.
I mean, I love Micah Hyde. So.
All right. So I'm going to talk about some concerns. I'm going to have John go first just to kind of tie in with Don's question. So Don asked the question, can Rasheed Walker kick inside? And then the 7th round safety I will come back to when I get to mine. But so John, what's a safety or not safety? What's a training camp concern that you have?
Yeah, I'm worried, y'all. The interior offensive line depth is frankly terrifying. I mean, it's becoming pretty clear, and I know a lot of people don't necessarily like this, but obviously they're moving Zach Tom around a lot. But their preferred offensive line that is still the first string, the one that they still trot out above all others, would be David Bakhtiari, Elton Jenkins, Josh Myers, John Runyon Jr., and Zach Tom. And the thing is, that leaves Yash on the bench to be your swing tackle. But then if there's any injuries to the interior, they're probably going to have to kick Tom inside and then put Yash at right tackle. But you're creating having to move multiple pieces because of an injury. I mean, of course, like in an ideal world, you'd have your first string offense and then a second string offense that's almost as good. You can just plug in and play a backup in each set position, right? That's just not reality. But the truth is, by moving Tom inside, if there's an injury on the interior, and Yash outside, if there happens to be a second injury, you're looking very quickly at having to play someone like Royce Newman, who, against all logic, seems to be regressing as a player. Or you're having to play Jake Hansen if he makes the 53-man roster. Or Sean Ryan, who I think will make the 53, but is still very much a work in progress, as we saw in the Cincinnati game. So with Royce regressing, Hansen being someone who has made a world of progress now in his multiple years in the league, and Sean Ryan being a fairly large question mark, the interior offensive line gets concerning fast. And Greg, I see your comment there. Have y'all?
He's a troll. He's a troll. Don't answer him. Don't answer him.
Okay, I have. So Sean Ryan, no. Royce, yeah.
Imagine saying Royce Newman and the name gets worse with Jake Hansen. Like that's like.
It was bad too because like we had a scenario last season where Jake Hansen came in for an injury at right guard. Yeah. And then Hansen got injured, and we actually wanted Jake Hansen back in the game because of Royce Newman's struggle.
Yeah. If you're a believer in PFF grades, Jake Hansen had the 13th worst pass blocking grade for an interior offensive lineman in the NFL. So do with that info what you
will. Sean Ryan. All right.
Yeah. I mean, and that's the thing. We can hope that Sean Ryan can progress, but to this point, we've seen Sean Ryan do very well in one-on-ones. I mean, he held off Kobe Wooden very, very well.
Yep.
Well, once he enters into the full line, once he's in a preseason game, you can tell Ryan is still a work in progress. So interior offensive line for me is very concerning, and it's becoming increasingly so the longer camp goes on.
Yep.
Don, to answer your question, can Rasheed Walker kick inside? It's not really something he's done before, nor would I say is that going to be a strength of his. Of the three kind of like project tackles the Packers have maintained of Caleb Jones, Walker, and Luke Tenuta, the one most likely of the three to kick in was Luke Tenuta. And then, of course,
also hurt
injury. Yeah. So I don't think it necessarily matches Walker's type to kick inside.
So we need to protect Elton Jenkins and John Runyon Jr. at all costs until the regular season starts.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So, Jake, what's a position group that you're looking at that's a concern for you?
So for me, and people are gonna probably freak out on me again, but I went with D-line depth, and there's one specific reason that I say that. Last year, Kenny Clark played 807 snaps. Now, this is the rest of the D-line. You have T.J. Slayton, who's the starting nose tackle this year. You have Jonathan Ford backing him up. You have Carl Brooks, who is backing up Kenny Clark. And then on the right side, you have Devontae Wyatt, first-round pick from last year. Obviously, we all know that he didn't get much playing time. Chris Slayton and Colby Wood. Now, you have some rookies in there, which I understand. You add all their snaps together, 812. 5 more snaps than one person on the line. My only concern, and you can say this about the wide receivers too, but wide receivers, you can see the talent. You know, you can see that they're understanding the offense. And, you know, the thing about Dubs and Watson is they got a lot of snaps last year. So they were force-fed, you know. And that wasn't the case for Devontae Wyatt last year. He came on late. And a T.J. Slayton, who is now going to be in his 3rd year in the league, he's kind of slowly progressing. And then Jonathan Ford, he's going into his 2nd season. Chris Slayton, outside of everybody else, Kenny Clark, Chris Slayton has 4 years. Everybody else is 1 year or 2 years of NFL experience. So looking at how young they are and looking at the Packers' rush defense the last couple of years, giving up high averages, high yards per game, high yards before contact, just something that concerns me. As a former D lineman, it makes me want to throw up every time I watch a running back run 6.5 yards before getting touched. Also, it would help Quay Walker so much in his growth. And help your hype train over there, John. If one of these guys, you know, Devontae Wyatt, and these guys have looked great in camp, and they look really good in the first preseason game. If one of these guys can just step up, we've been waiting forever for Kenny Clark to get a partner in crime, right? Kenny Clark's been in the league since 2016. Which is crazy when I looked that up.
Still only 26.
I know, it's the dumbest thing ever. But I just looking for one of these guys to make a big step, but it might be a lot asking a young player to do that.
Yeah. Greg, I'm going to bring up safeties. I just want to address real quick. Simon said it sounds like Ford has taken a good step this offseason. It wouldn't be surprised if we kept 6. I really wouldn't either, just so they can keep rotating guys fresh is really the main thing with that. So my concern is the safety position. Greg got ahead of me a little bit. For me, it's safeties. And as far as safety is concerned, for me, what the Packers did was just take a whole big handful of darts and they're throwing them all at the board at once and seeing which one sticks somewhere good. That's how I feel about the safety group. I mean, we're relying on Darnell Savage to basically return to form as a starter. Yeah. And then you're looking at Rudy Ford, Dallin Levitt, Jonathan Owens, Javarius Moore, Ennis Gaines, who's currently injured, and Antonio Johnson Jr.
That's tough.
And you need 3 of those guys
to
probably make the roster.
Yeah.
Obviously, Dallin Levitt is a guy who's going to make the roster probably just based on his special teams contributions. But right now, I mean, take your pick of which guy you're going to start next to Darnell Savage, whether it be Rudy Ford or Jonathan Owens, who's a sure tackler. Or maybe Antonio Johnson Jr. has enough in the next 2 preseason games to be able to try to stake a claim. But right now, for me, it's probably Rudy Ford just because he has, I think, the most experience in the system, as all the rest of these guys are all new except for Ennis Gaines to the Packers organization. So I don't know if you guys have any thoughts on what the Packers are going to do at safety, but for me, who's starting after Darnell Savage is a concern.
Probably Rudy Ford, in my opinion. I would say Rudy Ford. He played here last year, obviously, so probably a leg up in that category. I just want to respond to Steve real quick. Steve, if we only win 6 games, I promise you 2 of them are against the Bears. So deal with it, buddy.
My take on the safety position is I'm looking at how they've been operating in training camp, constantly rotating through Rudy Ford, Tarvarius Moore, Jonathan Owens, right? And I'm not going to be shocked if that job is actually a combination of all of them. I mean, it matchup dependent or even in a game, play dependent.
Will Sewell a little bit?
Maybe if they want to get Valentine on the field more. I mean, we haven't seen Sewell play safety in this camp so far. So I won't be shocked at all. I mean, like, we've seen Brian Gutekunst before. When there's a hole in the roster, he just adds quantity instead of quality, and then he hopes to find someone who can just like take over. At safety, I'm not sure we're going to see that. All these guys have different strengths. All of them have different playmaking abilities. And that leads me to believe as though this job may just be a combination of puzzle pieces to form the whole next to Savage.
So I'm going to address just a handful of comments. First, Simon asked a question that I think is a good question to ask, just because I think it's going to be asked based on Matt LaFleur's comments. Is there a world where you see Darnell Savage not starting? He said he hasn't looked into it yet, but do you think Douglas gets a shot at it? I think if Rasul Douglas plays any safety, it's not going to be in a starting role. It would be in just complementary packages.
Yep.
And then, Brett, we're going to come back to yours.
Well, and I'll say, I mean, from everything we've seen, I would just jump in and say Savage's job is safe. I mean, he hasn't been playing like standout ball in camp.
Yep.
But at the same time,
his name called giving things up either. So
yeah. I mean, that's true. We haven't seen him completely mess it up either.
Right.
But all of the switching of personnel has constantly been at the other safety position.
Yep.
They seem to be very comfortable for now with Savage in that closer up to the line, playing more of a robber role.
Yep.
That seems to be unequivocally his for now.
Yeah.
Yep, and that's what I told you guys when we were talking about Douglas when we first got to camp. I was like, you just let Douglas take that third of the field, and you allow Savage to just run around close to the line of scrimmage, which is where they like him. And if he can flourish in that role, I mean, they tried to put him closer to the line by putting him at nickel corner, right?
Yep.
They tried to force him to be on the line, basically. So just allowing him to be on the field. Packers are going to be fast on defense. There's no doubt about that.
And Greg said he's got good ball hawking instincts. Definitely a great hypothetical, referring to Rasul Douglas.
Agreed.
Steve, I'll say it's possible that the Bears win.
Yeah.
I don't think
agree
it's
too.
likely, but it's possible. There's no denying that it's possible.
I agree.
But he did say he likes watching us and listening us to talk about football, so we appreciate that.
Yeah, Steve, you're good. You're a good guy, man. That's why I could talk some ish with you, man. You take it and you give it back. I appreciate that.
Okay, so one last concern, Brett brought it up, is competition for kickers. Carlson can't kick like this. Imagine in the frozen tundra. So where are you guys at with Anders Carlson?
Jake, why don't you go first? I'll round it out.
I'm just going to say exactly what I said to you guys. If he was an after the draft pickup, okay, I understand that point of view. They literally wasted draft capital on him. He's not going anywhere. They are going to watch him miss kicks. They're going to watch him miss extra points. Hopefully they're watching him make a lot of kicks, right? That's what we're all hoping for. But he's going to miss some. It's going to happen, and we're going to have to deal with the growing pains at the kicker position, the quarterback position, defensive line, everywhere. Basically everywhere.
Yeah.
This team is young, if not the youngest team in the NFL. So growing pains are inevitable.
Bakhtiari is just hanging it up.
Yeah.
What I'll say with Anders Carlson, and I said this to the guys that we do our Friday night shows with, is if we get into situations where we're relying on Anders Carlson to win us games, or if we lose games if he doesn't come through, it's, to me, I'm going to not just solely blame Anders Carlson for being the reason the Packers lost or won. To me, if we're in a situation where there's teams that we consider the Packers either in the same tier of teams or teams that we consider the teams that the Packers should beat, and we're not winning those games strictly because of the kicker, to me, there's other things that are happening in those games that you could have done better than just like putting the 100% of the game on the kicker. So to me, there's more to it than just blaming the kicker because we lost by 2 and he missed a 58-yard field goal that would have won us the game. There's going to be other things that could have been done, whether it's being better on third downs or better in the red zone defensively, like anything that can be on there. It's not going to be just Anders Carlson that is winning or losing games for the Packers.
Yeah, and there's a lot to say about Carlson. I mean, look, to this point, he's had just as many days where he's been 5 of 6, 7 of 8, as many days as he's had days where he's 4 of 8 or anything like that. Yep. To Jake's point, they spent draft capital on him for a reason. And if you want to know what those reasons are, it's pretty simple. He's got a huge leg. I mean, there's been a number of times in camp where he tries a 42-yard field goal, and he doesn't just hit it. He hits it over the net beyond the goalpost. I mean, his leg is gigantic. So the other reason why there's some room for positivity is go back and look at his 2020 stats at Auburn. In 2020, he was probably the best kicker in the SEC, one of the best kickers in the entire country.
Yep.
And then 2021, I think it was a torn ACL. 2022, he broke his shoulder, which is the most
weird injury for a kicker.
Right. But he talked in an interview during that last year in college how it threw off his timing. So what Bisaccia sees the little brother of a kicker who he's had tremendous success with, Daniel Carlson.
Yep.
And now looks at that. This is a kid who he supposedly has known since he's been 16 years old. And Bisaccia is saying, I see what's here. I see that I can fix him. Give him. And I understand all of the calls out there for wanting to bring in competition. But Tom Silverstein from the Walking Journal Sentinel just wrote an article, I think it was him anyway, earlier this week, detailing that the Packers and Carlson have identified what the issue is for consistency, why the ball is always going wide right. And it has a lot to do with his motion and how at times he shortens his motion. And so what that tells me is if you believe that you've identified the problem, then what you need in order to fix said problem is repetition and live game reps. And if they were to go bring in a competition right now, go sign a kicker off the street and bring him in, suddenly you're taking those reps for Carlson and cutting them in half in a practice setting. And when you've got a rookie kicker, that's not necessarily what you want to do. You want him to get the work. You want him to fix what you believe you've identified as the problem. Because if you only cut his kicks in half and he gets half the practice time, you're diminishing the likelihood that you're going to fix said problem.
That's a good point.
I don't look at Anders Carlson and think like this is a motivation problem. They got to bring in someone to bring out the best of him. No, I think it's a consistency and a technical problem. And that takes practice.
Yeah, it's a good point. And he was, after practice yesterday, he was working on kicks by himself after everybody else was done with practice.
Well, and even yesterday, I mean, he started out the day 5 for 5. And then what occurred was they did 2-minute drill stuff. One of them, he came in, he missed one wide right. I think it was from about 40 yards out. And then the second field goal kick yesterday was the weirdest field goal kick I have ever seen. I mean, like they came rushing in. It was one of those where like you've got 5 seconds to get the special teams unit on. So like special teams unit came sprinting on. They snap it. Carlson kicks. The thing rotated, and then it just died. Like it kept spinning. It just stopped going forward. And I know LaFleur said this morning that it was a mishit, but I saw Andy Herman talk about how like it was a Wile E. Coyote like run off the cliff type thing. It's exactly what it looked like. It was baffling. But I don't know. I believe in Carlson. I understand that the Packers are looking to weather the storm and not make a panic move because they want to get him reps and they want to see him succeed.
And they did it in what was it? Was it 2019 when Mason Crosby missed like 7 field goals and he was like 21 of 28 on the season?
Yeah.
Like it's going to be patience, which I think is a really great way to transition into talking about Jordan Love. Is going to be patience. Like Jake mentioned, all the position groups that we're talking about on the roster. Kicker is going to be another one where we're going to have scenarios, and it's going to happen with Jordan Love too, where guys are going to make mistakes. It is going to happen. You might as well accept that now. But this is where the lessons in context part comes in, is when they happen, first of all, I want to see how they react. Like, I don't want to see, like, heads dropping and more conservative play. Like, if Jordan Love throws a bad interception, I don't want to see him afraid to throw the ball more than 10 yards down the field. And then the next thing is going to be learning from those mistakes, which it sounds like Anders Carlson is starting to do already. So just for me personally, I want to say Aaron Rodgers' name as little as possible this season. I understand comparing Jordan Love's first season as the full-time starter to Jordan Love's first-time season as the first-time starter. But nobody should be judging Jordan Love by Aaron Rodgers' standards. It's the same thing like Jake and I have talked about for the last 3 weeks with Adrian Hauser and Corbin Burns, that they are not the same player. Don't judge a 4-time MVP the way you judge a first-year starter who doesn't even have 4 years of experience in the league. So Love, he's going to miss some throws. He's going to throw some bad turnovers. But can he learn from them, not make the same throws, the same mistakes? So, Jake, is there anything that you want to say about just contextually with Jordan Love that you're watching for this year?
So I went back to kind of give myself some context on the situation, right? Because before I could teach anybody else, I had to teach myself. And I was watching some highlights, and man, has his feet, first of all, has improved in the pocket, and his throwing motion was kind of ugly. Not gonna lie to you. And it's the same throwing motion that Justin Fields uses right now in real life. So it's ugly. It takes a long time to get rid of the ball, and now he's winding up, and he looks like he's trying to throw every pass 80 yards, and even if it's a 5-yarder, now he's up here, and he's boom, getting that ball out quick. So the one thing that I'll say, I'm going to keep this short and sweet because we are going to hammer this home all season long. Jordan Love needs to be judged on a game-by-game basis and not harshly every time either, okay? There's situational, not a throw-by-throw basis, because that's exactly what I saw from the preseason game.
Yeah.
He missed one throw to Luke Musgrave. Oh, my God, the guy's fired. We might as well just put in Sean Clifford for the whole year.
No,
So
thanks for the number one pick so we can draft Caleb Williams.
It's like he missed one throw, and he actually made a bunch of really good throws in that game.
Mm-hmm.
Threw a touchdown. He had the pass to Watson that ended up getting knocked down. Tremendous play by Daxton Hill, by the way.
Yep.
Tyler and I were very high on Daxton Hill in the draft. Fast guy, can cover a lot of ground. Very good football IQ. Just a great play by him. Otherwise, that was going to be a perfect throw to Watson. He was walking into the end zone. So game by game, not throw by throw. Let's give him time to grow and develop into the player that we all believe that he can become.
Brett said Carlson's going to have some growing pains, as are a lot of positions on the roster. He said the first time he wins a game making a field goal that realistically Mason couldn't, all will be forgiven. And that's unfortunately the knee-jerk logic of a lot of social media stuff. But,
well, and the reputation of Mason coming out of college was big leg with some accuracy concerns. It got fixed. Sometimes it takes time.
Sure. So for me, what I'm looking at with Jordan Love, and honestly, if you look at it, you can put the tight ends and the wide receivers, and like Jake said, the D line, some of the safety guys that we're going to see, some of the corners that we're going to see. Like Eric Stokes, when he comes back, he's essentially going to be a year and a half into his career. And we're going to see Carrington Valentine. We are in a position that we haven't really been in as Packers fans. We, as a fan base, have a very rare opportunity to not only see a new era, but we have an opportunity to grow our knowledge of how we evaluate quarterback play. It's something we haven't done outside of fourth-round Brett Hundley for most of the season. We haven't really had a big opportunity to actually see and go through developing a progressing potential quarterback.
Mm-hmm.
So for potentially growing the knowledge of how quarterback play should be progressed by the player himself and then how we evaluate them, just the Packers are young at tons of positions. So we get to watch and evaluate and see, there's still going to be lots of it, but fewer Facebook and coach GMs looking at this, and we'll actually get to hear from Matt LaFleur, from Brian Gutekunst, how these guys are developing. We get to see it firsthand from our fan base's point of view, not just watching the Bears develop a new starting quarterback, or the Lions trading for a new quarterback, or the Vikings signing a quarterback from the Washington, at the time, Redskins. We get to firsthand see a new quarterback begin his career. So I'm actually really, really excited for it. And another guy who was excited for it was Kurt Benkert. He's excited for Jordan Love. He said, this is what Kurt Benkert said. He said, we should be able to, I think a lot of us are excited for him. Benkert brought up the ability to change his arm angles, which we saw a little bit of today. We saw a little bit of the side arm. We saw a couple throws like that from Jordan Love today. Mm-hmm. Something that guys like Matthew Stafford and Patrick Mahomes are known for is changing that arm angle. Isaac said Benkert is a new match. Yeah. But Benkert also mentioned Jordan Love's footwork improving and his timing improving as he's maturing as a player. So, and I've said this on previous shows that we've done, I don't blame Brian Gutekunst for trying to repeat the formula that they pulled from Brett Favre to Aaron Rodgers, from Aaron Rodgers to Jordan Love.
Yeah, why not?
It worked out fantastically for the Packers when they did it. They obviously got a Super Bowl out of it and a super long first ballot Hall of Fame career out of it. So I don't blame them for trying to replicate the process. But Benkert did also mention that Dodds and Watson have tons of talent. He said the exact words were something special, and they just need experience. So that's what I'm looking for from those two. John, what are you looking for from Jordan?
I guess I would just say this. I think it's going to be important for all of us, three of us very much included. I know we want to say Aaron Rodgers' name as little as possible today, but we have to look at Jordan Love through his own lens, right? That Musgrave throw from the Cincinnati game, I feel, was a perfect example. Because in years past, when Rodgers missed a throw, looking at just a single play basis, like we have a tendency of doing with Jordan Love, just looking at him for one singular play, Rodgers makes a bad throw. Well, we don't take it as a big deal because at the time we had faith, because we had seen it before, that Rodgers will fix it, right? Even those little outs to Jones and Dillon that we see so many times the last couple of years, right? When every one of those would be at like Dillon's feet, we would just go,
You get the next one. Yeah.
Right? Because we've seen him do it successfully. With Jordan Love, he's not receiving the same benefit of doubt because we haven't seen him do it before. It doesn't mean that he can't. It doesn't mean that he still isn't doing the correct read. It just means that we have this built-in faith with somebody else. We don't have it with him. But yet, Jordan Love is on the same, I'm going to say similar trajectory of when he came out. He was a project quarterback. And the Packers for 3 years have invested in said project to fix the technical aspects of his game, to fix how he would read his defense, and to make him less turnover prone. In the preseason, or in the training camp thus far, I think Jordan Love after today is now up to like 4 total interceptions, maybe 5, throughout all of camp so far. And if you're reading reports from other camps, that's on the low side, what a lot of quarterbacks are doing right now. So,
and we saw him take some chances today, so it's not because it's not because of a lack of taking chances.
No,
It's not
it's
like
not.
he's just playing it safe.
He was throwing across the middle a whole bunch. He threw late across the middle a couple of times. I pointed
He's
out.
taking chances.
And the thing that even like Dan Orlovsky from ESPN said when reviewing that Cincinnati game was Jordan Love made the right decision, the right read every single time he threw the ball. Which, if you're looking for a young quarterback and you're going to say, well, at least we can bank on the fact that he's making the right decisions, you're going to wind up with a more successful offense more often than not. And I see like Captain had a comment earlier, like give him a good offensive line and watch a young quarterback go. Yeah. That's exactly it. Stay protected, have a quality run game. And if he's making the right decisions, this offense absolutely can be successful. And we can start building in that faith that we used to have in some other old ayahuasca drinking old man.
And based on things you were saying, John, one thing that I want to bring up as we talk, Jake and I like to relate some of the sports fan to life things is people fear uncertainty. That's just a fact of life, really. And we're going into an uncertain situation. Jake has said it a whole bunch of times that Jordan Love is currently an unknown.
Yep.
And that's, like I said, people fear the uncertainty. So
Yep.
I do agree with Simon and Isaac and the comments. Simon said the thing that impresses me about Love so far is his poise and ability to go through progressions. I think that's been the biggest jump of this game so far, which 100% I agree with. And Isaac said Love's footwork is amazing. His mechanics look way better than where he was in years past.
That's true.
I agree with that as well.
Just repeating what I said. That's great. Good job, Isaac.
When we did our Friday shows last summer, we talked about seeing that in preseason, that Jordan Love looks better this preseason,
100%.
better than where he did during the one Chiefs start and the preseason before that.
Yep.
So seeing Jordan Love continue to progress, for me personally, this is something that people can do for life as well, is don't compare Jordan Love to his predecessor. Compare Jordan Love today to Jordan Love yesterday.
Yep.
That's what I want to do more than comparing Jordan Love to Aaron Rodgers. I don't want to spend a ton of time doing that because they're different. They're different players. They're different people.
Well, and that's the purpose of this year too, right? I mean, we can be honest about, are the Packers going to try to win every single game? Yeah,
yes,
of course. But this year is different. They're not walking into this year saying like it's Super Bowl or bust, as has been the attitude of the last couple of years. This is an evaluation year. It's a learning year. but most of all, it's a year of progress. I would hope that by week 17, 18, Jordan Love is looking comfortable in the role. He's looking like a more competent quarterback than we have seen in week 1.
All right, so we're going to wrap the show up with just some Q&A time. I have a couple questions to ask the guys here. One being a question that's kind of been answered by just what we've seen from the reps so far is where do you think Rashawn Terry makes his debut? Originally, this was kind of a question mark when we talked about this about a month ago. It seemed like maybe he would do it week 5. You get that 4-week pup, and then the Packers are on bye. So I was thinking maybe week 5. Jake at the time was thinking week 3. Now it sounds like he's going to be ready for week 1. And as we mentioned earlier when we started the show, Rashawn Gary is not doing team drills yet, but he's out in practice wearing pads and a helmet. He's not running with the rehab guys. He's out in pads and in a helmet, just not doing team drills yet. So maybe just a super quick answer from you guys. When do you think Rashawn Gary makes his debut?
I'm sticking with week 3. I don't think they're putting him on the pup. I think they're not going to put him on the pup because if he can come back week 3, he can come back week 2. You're not going to want him just sitting there waiting, right? You're not going to cage up an animal. So for me, still week 3. I still stand by my choice because he's still pissed off about that Lions game last year, and he's going to kill Jared Goff about 4 times in that game. So I can't wait.
Yeah, Jay, I'm going to echo that. I think week 3 feels right. If we see him in weeks 1 and 2, I think it's going to be just like Za'Darius was a couple of years ago.
Yeah.
He played in week 1, but it was only on 3rd and longs when he had that back injury.
Yeah.
If we see Rashawn in weeks 1 and 2, I think it's going to be a role like that.
Like a snap count.
Yeah, bring him in as basically a pass rush specialist, and
Yep.
then he goes right off the field.
That I strongly agree with you on.
Yeah, and then, but other than that, even that feels early. I think maybe week 3, but he's going to have some kind of lead-in period in games, I'm sure.
Brett asked the question is, do we have any wide receivers that can stand out as blockers like Cobb, Nelson, or Hines Ward? Christian Watson.
Thank you.
Fantastic blocker. He came into the draft as a great blocker coming from a North Dakota State system.
Yes.
Being that person, he didn't have a ton of tape as a wide receiver, but he was raw and super athletic in addition to being a good blocker. So first answer is Christian Watson. Second answer is maybe Jaden Reed. Romeo Doubs isn't a bad blocker. I wouldn't describe him as a plus blocker or as good of a blocker as, say, an Alan Lazard or even MVS when he was here. But Simon brought up in the comments Dontavian Wicks. He looks like a willing blocker, absolutely. And right now I'm looking at Jaden Reed. If he can continue playing the slot and if he can handle blocking some outside linebackers, Jaden Reed is going to be a huge, huge asset in the slot.
I mean, I know he's a tight end, but that's why I love having Luke Musgrave in the slot because he can go down and crack on a linebacker. He's got the size for it. So I mean, just think about all the stuff you could do with Luke Musgrave in the slot, man.
Isaac brought another good example with his Tucker Kraft.
Yeah, of which Kraft laid out quite a few good blocks in specifically family night. It was. I mean, Musgrave, I'm not going to lie, I'm a little concerned about his inline blocking. I think in the slot, he can be a real weapon as a blocker, but in line, he showed, especially earlier in camp, that he was a little bit of a turnstile at times, but Kraft has been coming along really well as a blocker as of late. That's going to be an asset.
Another guy that I want to throw out there, Josh said it'll hurt not having Lewis anymore blocking. That is where in steps Josiah DeGuara. Because I talked about this during a whole bunch of games last season. I love it when they get Josiah DeGuara in pre-snap motion and then have Aaron Jones follow him. Every single time they ran it last season, having DeGuara in pre-snap motion, having him moving in up to full speed before the ball is snapped, and having Aaron Jones follow him, I did not see that play go for less than 7 yards any time they ran it. So I want to see a lot of that. I think, and Jake and I had this discussion a little bit, I think Josiah DeGuara is the best non-offensive line blocking player that the Packers have on offense. Christian Watson, I agree, is certainly a worthy candidate, but Josiah DeGuara is one of the Packers' best blockers.
Yeah.
I'm going to be nice to Josiah DeGuara right now, but it's fine. And Simon, I don't think he's getting cut. He's a special teams guy. Packers made an emphasis especially this last offseason, to really boost up the special team. So I don't see Levitt going anywhere.
Simon asked the question, is anyone a surprise punt this year? You mentioned Dallin Levitt.
Simon, I think it's possible that this is the year Levitt goes. I mean, look, right now, excluding Ennis Gaines because he's this weird hybrid corner safety, but besides him, they've got 6 safeties, really. I mean, Savage, Moore, Ford, Owens, Anthony Johnson Jr., and then Levitt. 5 of the 6, you're comfortable playing some form of defensive snaps. The one you're not is down Levitt. 1 of the 6 is actually under contract longer than this year. 7th round pick Anthony Johnson Jr. So, I mean, like, ultimately, if you're evaluating all of that, Levitt is a very good special teamer. He's basically captain of teams. He's Rich Bisaccia's best friend. Like, we know about the connections there.
Yep.
If he makes the team, that's why.
Right.
But at the same time, we know that last week, Jonathan Owens was alternating with Down Levitt at some of Levitt's special team spots, which had never been done before. So maybe the Packers are looking at it, saying if Owens can do Levitt's spot like Levitt can,
Simon,
it's possible.
When we get to our Packers primer, I think we would usually do the last 3 on, first 3 off with the Packers 53-man roster. I think Dallin Levitt is one of those guys who could find himself as one of those 6 players.
Yeah.
Brett said, who do you think we sneak through waivers and get onto the practice squad? There's a whole bunch of guys that could be for that.
I mean, of the bigger named ones, I mean, if Malik Heath doesn't make the 53, he was a UDFA. It's possible everyone passes over him again.
Patrick Taylor.
Patrick Taylor's a guarantee.
Bro, see, I'm telling you. I was peeking at Isaac's comment. I was like, yeah, that's funny, bro.
I mean, it's the one, I guess I would say most of the fringe roster, they could probably comfortably get onto the practice squad.
Yeah.
The one that I would be most concerned about is probably Brenton Cox Jr.
Brenton Cox is a good one.
Because right now he's proving that he can be on a football field and not get in trouble, which has historically been his problem.
I didn't get drafted.
Yeah, realistically, if he didn't get kicked out of 2 collegiate programs, he probably would have been a mid-round pick.
Yep.
And if some other team, looks at him and says, well, now he's on his best behavior, he's in the NFL,
Had a good camp.
he's worth a shot. Yeah. So, but I would say like most of their cuts could comfortably just get shifted into the practice squad.
I agree with you. This is a question that's the forefront of everybody's mind, a question that we asked on our show a couple weeks ago. All 4 of us had different answers. Is who do you think is going to be RB3? Right now, it probably is Patrick Taylor because 2 of the guys who are going to be in contention for it, being Lou Nichols and Tyler Goodson, are both injured.
Yeah.
So it's going to be whoever's healthiest and most ready to go, probably. Also, I think it's certainly within the realm of possibility of the Packers only carry 2 running backs.
Yeah,
I can see that.
I agree. And partly because they have such depth that could be running back 3, especially with the ascension of Emmanuel Wilson. Plus, Goodson's hurt right now, but if he comes back, Nichols, Taylor, they got bodies that could do it.
Use a draft pick on Nichols is why I thought he would be the one. But, so, John, I want to ask you a question. You pointed out, based on Matt LaFleur comments for Family Night, that Love's nerves / adrenaline maybe get factored into his performance a little bit. Is that something that maybe you think would be a factor in, say, game 1 against the Bears, whether it maybe just be the first quarter or the whole first game or the first quarter of a couple games? Is there something that you think with Love's nerves and adrenaline just being the first time, all the time starter and not just kind of thrown into the fire a couple times?
Yeah, I think we're going to see it this year. I do. It's been kind of a pattern. Starting out Family Night, he was airing some throws or some accuracy issues. Very first training camp practice of the year, he was kind of off target. I think week 1, other marquee games throughout the season, this isn't going to be a quick fix. It's going to take him some time to settle into being the starting quarterback for the Green Bay Packers. So I do think, and I'm not saying it's going to last all game, but I'm saying quite possibly quarter 1 of week 1, quite possibly quarter one of week 18 or other division, like other marquee games.
Prime times and big matchups, stuff like that.
Yeah, I don't think it's going to be like the season-long play. I don't think it's necessarily going to be game-long.
Not going to be like the yips or anything like that. Just nerves and adrenaline.
I think that's exactly it. And I won't be shocked at all if the first series, week 1 against the Bears, doesn't go well. And then everyone overreacts. But it's just because he's got so much pent-up energy for this. Same with the first quarter of the home opener. We've seen the pattern from Love.
Sure.
Until he settles in, I think it's going to be a consistent thing.
All right. So Isaac asks, how impressive has Devontae Wyatt been? Impressive enough that he's locked in as a starter. Say that.
His quickness and explosion is apparent, significantly more so than last year. He's looking like a monster.
Looks like a first-round pick.
Yeah, he does.
John, I'm going to kick this one back to you because you talked about guard earlier.
Yeah.
Packers deeper attack than they are guard. Who's the next man up at guard? Do you think the Packers need to add another?
I don't want to hear his name anymore.
Yeah. So here's the thing. Like, the Packers' tackle depth is exceptional. Their interior offensive line depth needs some help.
Shaky.
Let's put it that way.
Shaky.
But realistically, like, the Packers are in a spot where they've got 5 tackles that you'd be fairly comfortable putting out in an NFL game, which is probably a longer list than 90% of teams in the league. However, at the same token, like interior offensive line, you've got Hansen, who I don't want in a game, Royce Newman, who I don't want in a game, Sean Ryan, who may not be ready to go into a game. So to answer the question, I don't necessarily think, and I saw someone ask this earlier about trading draft capital for another guard. I don't think that's going to happen. But I won't be shocked at all if the Packers move on from Royce Newman and Jake Hansen and then hit the waiver wire to infuse, because a young team isn't going to want to trade draft capital for a backup guard. But the waiver wire gets somebody else in, free agent signing maybe not a big one, but just someone. That, I think, could very well happen, and it's veering into likely territory, in my opinion.
And this is one of the things that I strongly agree with you on the waiver wire thing, is when the Packers sign a guy off of somebody else's waivers, we don't need to make the dumbass comments of, now the Packers are winning the Super Bowl because they signed this guy's off the garbage sheet. They're not signing guys off the waivers to be immediate starters at guard. They're signing him for guard depth in case a bunch of injuries happen.
Well,
it's annoying that needs to be said.
Or every move is going to be this big move, but why would you be a fan of a team and not be in favor of them improving roster spot 53? If it's a better player than what you had, don't you even want the worst guys on your team to be better than they were yesterday? So I've never understood that either.
Dan asked another question. Did the GMs discuss depths and trades during these joint practices? Trades?
Probably.
I don't think. Do you think?
I think they. I don't think anything's off the table.
They, well, I mean, in the case of the Patriots, Belichick is their GM. So, I mean, every joint practice scenario, you can bet that the team's GM is watching the other team very, very closely.
Sure.
I mean, this is a good chance for them to get to know guys that they otherwise wouldn't. And I wouldn't be shocked if trades are discussed in a way without them actually being discussed. Like Brian Gutekunst goes up to Belichick later tonight and goes, "Hey, I really like that number 4 inside linebacker, just for future reference.
Like that number 9 outside linebacker."
Yeah.
Fun.
Yeah, great. More rain like we had when we were at practice.
I like how it didn't rain like at all this summer, and my grass looked like the wastelands, and now it's just flooding. That's fun. I like that.
Brett asked a question about the emergency quarterback situation. It doesn't count against the 53 unless the other goes down, but it doesn't count as the practice squad QB, or do we essentially get an extra one? It does count, I believe, as a practice squad guy. They do get an extra spot for, I don't know how to say his first name, but it's Odegamu.
Yeah, Udumagu.
Okay. All right. I guess I botched that one too.
Oh,
I didn't YouTube that one. I normally do for all the pronunciation.
I had to YouTube.
I was going to be nowhere near that.
They do get an extra one for the international player. Isaac's out here asking about Rasul Butler, former NBA champion.
Right, I was going to say that. I was going to say, man, he's talented.
Rasul Douglas. We did touch on that earlier, but it's going to remain to be seen what they do with starting Steve. So.
Yeah, can I just jump in about that quarterback number 3 thing?
Yeah.
I actually had to look this up the other day because we were talking about it on my channel, and it's the quarterback has to be part of the 53-man roster. The extra element of it is traditionally on game day, you activate 48 of your 53 guys.
Okay.
So the quarterback can basically be guy 49. He can be inactive on game day, but then if both quarterbacks go down, he can then enter the game. So it's not a practice squad guy. It's still someone who has to be on the 53, but he can be part of that inactive collection.
So he's a bonus guy for game day.
Yeah, exactly.
Cool. All right. You guys, any other questions you want to ask?
No.
No?
All righty. Well, before we sign off, I want to say thank you to Stadium View for hosting us. It's awesome to be here, just right over here from the practice field. So very, very thankful for them to be willing to host us and to help the show, which is cool.
Hey, Tyler, why don't we, just to jump in, why don't we do a plug for each of our channels since we've got new viewers?
Yes, this guy over here, he's on the bottom if you're watching online. He's to my right if you're here in person. This is John. John runs Lombardi Time Brews. I'll let him introduce himself.
Yeah, so if you're part of Wisco Fanatics and you love watching their stuff, I would encourage you come check out Lombardi Time Brews. I do 4 to 5 episodes a week, all year long on my YouTube channel. Just search Lombardi Time Brews. Would be very, very happy to have you there. And I've really, really enjoyed working with Wisco Fanatics. I think we have a lot of collaboration coming in the future between these 2 channels. So, Tyler, why don't you tell my people what you got going on?
Yeah, John's a good guy. So Jake and I are Wisco Fanatics. We are not just one team. Jake and I talk about the Packers on Friday nights at 8 with Simon and Bryant. They join us for that. And then on Wednesdays, just Jake and I, we do Milwaukee Brewers, Milwaukee Bucks, and then Badgers football and basketball. Whatever is in season, it's Wednesdays, 4 o'clock Central Time, all year round. You can watch us on Facebook and YouTube, and then you can get us wherever you listen to podcasts as well. And what makes our show different from other Wisconsin sports shows is we do it from an optimistic and positive perspective as to relate not just, how to be a better fan, which is something that we strive for, but also ways that you can use your sports fandom to help potentially improve your life. So we try to work in some things like that as well, and just try to do it from a more positive perspective.
Yeah.
Well, one quick thing I'll add in. If you're a Brewers fan as long as a Packers fan, we actually interviewed Vinny Rottino on Monday night, so go check that out. It was only a half an hour, so really good stuff from him. And again, we like to relate sports to life so you can improve yourself as a fan and as a person. It's worked for both of us. I was a pretty shitty fan, and I was probably not a great guy to be around, but I feel like I'm pretty cool now. And I just want to say thank you to John as well. John, you've been awesome, dude.
Thanks, man. This has been a lot of fun. I just see a couple of questions. Let's answer super quick. Casey, oh no, I left in the feed. Yeah, Casey, would you pick up Mo Alley Cox if cut? Yeah, Tyler. Yeah, I would. I think we just plug him right into the Tyler Davis role.
Yep.
Add him into the tall guys on the roster.
Yep.
Yeah. Dan, thanks for the shout out. Lombardi Time Brews, but crossing some milestones as of late at YouTube. Dan, you've been here a long time, so thank you so much. Josh, I see you commenting on Tyler and Jake. That's fine. I won't take it personally. I know you're related still. And then Janelle, really glad you're going to subscribe to Wisco Fanatics, supporting these couple of great guys here. Really glad you were able to make it today as well, Janelle. So thanks to Lombardi Time Brews, all your regular viewers. Don't forget one programming note from me since some of you are here. I'm going to have preloaded content for this week. I'm still going to try to go live or do something from up north, but interwebs way up in the Northwoods. We'll see how that works. So,
not great friends.
Vacation. I see how it is. All right.
Not great friends.
And if you are in the area, Jake and I are doing our Badgers primer next Friday live at Isaac's Sports Bar in the Holstein. So we have another live show coming up. It's definitely going to be a lot of fun there. So we will be
Badgers
back for
football,
that.
baby.
And we will be back on Wednesday for our regular show. So see you then.
See you guys.
Thanks,